Okay, so these are the band descriptors for the IELTS exam. These are the band descriptors for the IELTS exam, and as you can see, the highest possible score is a 9, and the lowest possible score that you can get is a 0. All right, it's almost virtually impossible to get a 0. The only way you get a 0 is if you just don't even show up for the exam, or you just come to the exam and you sit there and cry because you don't know what you're doing. All right, so it's really hard to get a 0. Okay, and basically it's hard to get a bad score. It's hard to get a 1. It's hard to get a 2. I mean, you have to do really, really bad to get a 1 or a 2. I mean, really bad. And if you're getting a 1 or a 2, you probably shouldn't be taking the exam anyway. Okay, so I'm more speaking towards the people who are able to get a score of a 6, 7, 8, or 9. Okay, because to get into any decent, really decent university in the United States or the UK or Australia, New Zealand, you need to be getting scores of 6 or higher. All right, especially if you want to go to a really, really good university, 7 or higher. That's what they're looking for. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about. So, as I told you earlier, when they're grading you, you're graded in your 4 areas. You're graded in your task achievement. You're graded in your coherence and cohesion. You're graded in your lexical resource. That means vocabulary. It's a fancy way of saying vocabulary. And you're graded on your grammatical range and your accuracy. So when people ask me, well, how do I get a 7 in my writing? Well, are you doing the things that get you a 7? How do I get an 8 in my writing? Are you doing the things that get you an 8 in your writing? Now, it's also important to understand that you can get different scores in different parts. For example, you might get a 7 in your task achievement, a 8 in your coherence, a 6 in your vocabulary, and a 6 in your grammar, right? And so then you would add up all those 4 scores and divide it by 4, and then that will get you your overall writing score for task number 1. Okay, so you don't have you possibly might not have the exact same score in each of these different 4 categories that we're looking at here. All right, but if for example, if you're going to get a 7 in your task achievement, it means that you present a clear overview of the main trends for task number 1, the differences and the different stages, right? You cover the requirements of the task. In terms of coherence for a 7, you logically organize the information and ideas. There's clear progression. That's why I tell you that you have to write 4 distinct paragraphs, and each paragraph has a purpose. You use a range of cohesive devices, right? It says right here, use a range of cohesive devices, right? What it means by cohesive devices, they're talking about using your connectors and your transitions, right? If you have really good cohesive devices in your writing, then you have good cohesion. That's what gets you a really good grade. All right, and see when you move down to a 6, right? It says you use cohesive devices effectively, but cohesion with and or between sentences may be faulty or mechanical. When they say mechanical, they mean like basic forms they teach you in ESL school a lot of times. First, second, third, first, second, third, first, second, third, right? If you want to move up into a higher range of a 7 or 8, you have to use a range of cohesive devices. You can't just keep going first, second, third, first, second, third, first. You can't do that stuff. Okay. All right, and then when it comes to your lexical resource, to get a 7. Are you using a range of vocabulary, right? A range of vocabulary, not just the same, not basic beginner level English words. Do you use less common vocabulary? Okay, and also you have only a few. Like I said, it's your occasional errors in word choice or spelling. All right, here, like for a 6, it says you make some errors. And then if you went down and looked at a 5, you make noticeable errors in your spelling. So you see, it gets The level of the grade, the level of the band score that you get, it rises in terms of the level of English that you're demonstrating. Okay, so that's why I tell you. That's why you've heard me say several times throughout this course that it's an English test. Right? They're testing your English. You have to show your English ability. If you're doing the things that if you're doing the things that are considered a 5, you're going to get a 5. It's that simple. It doesn't matter if you understand it. It's how well is your writing? How good is your writing? If your writing only measures to a 4 or a 5, you're going to get a 4 or 5. Right? If you're doing these things in these different categories that equal a 4 or 5, that's what you're going to get. It's that simple. All right? It's that simple. In terms of your grammar, if you want to get a 7 in your grammar, are you using a variety of complex structures, conditional sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, connectors, transition? What are you doing? Are you using? Are your verb tenses consistent? Okay, or so that's you have to have a really good control of your grammar. Again, we're dealing with when it talks about errors. Right, when it talks about errors, like for a 7, it says a few errors. Okay, for a 6, it says some errors in grammar, but they rarely reduce communication. Then when you look at a 5, frequent grammatical errors. Right, for a 4, errors predominate. That means there's a lot of errors. Okay, so when you're talking about, well, how do I get that higher grade? It's about the quality of your writing. So I really encourage you to look at these band descriptors here. Look at them, study them. All right. And if you want to get a 7 or an 8 or a 9, then do the things that equal a 7, 8, or 9. You must do the things that fit the category. If you do the things that fit the category, then you will get that score. It's that straightforward. Okay? If you're not doing the things that fit the category of an 8, you're not going to get an 8. Okay? So I think having awareness and knowledge is very important. Most students go into their writing for task number 1 and task number 2 without really the proper understanding and knowledge of how grading works. And if you understand how grading works, then you know, if I want an 8 for task achievement, this is what I have to do. If I want an 8 for coherence, this is what I have to do. If I want an 8 for my vocabulary, this is what I have to do. If I want a 7 for my grammar, this is what I have to do. All right? And then you can look at your essays, or if you're sending me your essay to look at for you, I can look at it for you, of course, and I can tell you, hey, this is where your grammar is. Your grammar is in the category of a 7. Okay, or your grammar is in the category, or your vocabulary is in the category of a 6 or 7. So it's really important to understand grading. And I've talked to several different graders in terms of the process of grading, what they're looking at, how their entire process. And I know them very, very well. I know a lot of graders personally, and so I really understand how grading works because. You have to understand that in order to be able to teach students properly. Okay? So let's move on and let's keep going through how to do task number 1. All right. I'll talk to you soon.